CYBHI School Linked Partnership and Capacity Grant Kickoff Meeting. I'll be calling this the capacity grant for the rest of my portion of today's presentation, just to make sure that we don't go over on time just for the title of what we're talking about today. But I want to welcome you to today. We've got a pretty robust agenda. There are going to be 3 of us who are formally presenting today, but we have an entire team of people behind the scenes who are prepared to help us with the Q&A and everything as we go through the presentation. So know that you'll be hearing from 3 of us specifically, but again, we have a whole team. So our agenda for today, you can see that up here. We're really going to do a really quick overview of the capacity grant, which again, School Linked Partnership and Capacity Grant. Going to shorten that to capacity grant for today. Going to talk to you a little bit about where we are in the process and where we're going. So that includes development of an MOU with the county office. It also includes our development and support of each LEA, developing an implementation plan. And then really probably what you want to hear the most about is how the funds are going to be distributed and then what our important dates are. We've allocated, if we've got our timing down, we've allocated about 30 minutes at the end of this time that we have together for Q&A. So please make sure that you are preparing to ask questions all along the way. We have a couple of different ways. So if we'll go to the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about our meeting guidelines, or kind of just what we're doing behind the scenes here. First thing, if you can all put your name and the LEA that you're representing today, and we understand we're going to have multiple, some LEAs that have more than one person, but go ahead and put that into the chat for us. That'll help us know who's here, and we'll be recording today's session as well. So we'll have that memorialization. So we've got it in a couple of different places. We've got, again, a lot of content to cover. So if you can stay muted when you're not speaking, or if you're not speaking, that will help us with the background noise. We are going to use the raised hand feature when we get to the Q&A section. So please let us get through what we're presenting. Again, we've allocated a pretty significant time for Q&A. We'll use the raise the hand feature at that time. We also have, and we've put it into the chat, a link to record questions. So in addition to the questions that you're going to be asking us live today, we also have a provision for you to ask questions in a Google Doc. So that Google Doc, as well as the questions that we hear today live, are going to be the source for us to develop a frequently asked questions document, so that we'll be able to push that out to you as well. So 2 ways for you to ask questions. Please hold them until we get to that section. But if you want to type them in as we're talking, absolutely use the link to do that. With that, we're going to go to the next slide, where we're really going to start now with just a high-level overview of what we're doing here with the CYBHI. I think at this point, probably most of you have heard the acronym CYBHI. Probably most of you know that it's the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative. We tongue-in-cheek say we've run out of 3- and 4-letter acronyms. We are now on to 5-letter acronyms, and here we are with CYBHI. One of the things that I personally like about this particular investment, besides the fact that it's almost $5 billion, is that it's coming out of our Health and Human Services, I'll just say, side of the system. And it's intended to support students in our schools. So I would say I love spending other people's money on our kids. And this is an opportunity for that, with really some pretty lofty goals. And if we can get this moving, we know we're going to see some differences for our students, for our schools, for our families, and for our communities. So you can see this idea of integration, really focusing on creating that sense of belonging through youth-centered activities, voice, choice, all of those things that we know work for our students, but it really is about integration of systems. So that's at the end, at the core of this integration, to ensure that we're expanding access for all, so that when we're talking about identity and zip code being the predictors of success, we're beginning to chip away at that and eliminate that once we're successful. So we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So how are we going to do this in this particular investment? So this $4.7 billion investment is divided into, I tongue-in-cheek say, 20 easy work streams. And this slide is a reflection of those work streams. There's a lot to CYBHI. There's a lot to the capacity grant. Again, school-linked partnership and capacity grants. There's a lot to the school-wide multi-payer fee schedule for school-linked behavioral health services. And the two work streams that you see circled are the primary work streams that we're going to talk about today. And although they are connected in that they reinforce, each work stream reinforces the other, they are not necessarily required. One doesn't require the other or vice versa. So they are to build on each other and support each other, but it's not a requirement to do one or the other to participate in that particular work stream. So hopefully I'll do a better job in the next few minutes of laying that out. But the words look a lot the same when we see school linked in both the multi-payer fee schedule and we see school linked in the partnership and capacity grants, but they are two completely separate work streams. So I know that I've personally received some email questions, some text messages around cohorts and how, you know, this schooling partnership and capacity grant connects to the cohort. And do I need to now respond to cohort surveys? The cohorts are part of the multi-payer fee schedule. So in, I think it's orange, that work stream that's circled, that's where the cohorts live. The cohorts do not live in the blue school-linked partnership and capacity grants. We're going to dive deeper in all of the information, the follow-up, everything you're going to learn about today. Your allocation letter that you received is from the school-linked partnership and capacity grant. So we're going to go to the next slide. And we're going to show it to you one more way. So now we've taken those 20 easy work streams and we've narrowed it down to the two work streams that you can see sort of how we've laid it out as a Venn diagram, overlap, but they are not necessarily, you don't have to do one to do the other or vice versa. So each county office of education has received an allocation for the capacity grant. And that you can see in the yellow here. And the letter that you received from us, meaning San Bernardino County, those allocation dollars came to every county office within the state. And that was formula driven. That's why it's called an allocation. And then from there, the instructions that each county office have been given is to work with the LEAs and develop an allocation for how this investment can be utilized in the county to build capacity to expand services to students. Building capacity to expand services to students. Where it overlays with the multi-payer fee schedule is that expanding access, expanding services may include expansion of what's happening around services that are eligible for reimbursement through the multi-payer fee schedule. And that may be something that districts will engage in for sustainability, but that's also up to each individual district, how they approach that and whether or not they engage in that separate work stream within CYBHI. So capacity to expand access, fee schedule to sustain and expand access, to separate work streams. One, the capacity to implement a fee schedule may be how an LEA will proceed with the capacity grant investment. All right, we're going to move on to the next slide. So when we talk about the capacity grant, you can see the big buckets, the big priorities that have been identified for use. There's a lot of interpretation, a lot of room for local control. There's a lot of room for what each district identifies as the priority in their district. My recommendation is to connect with and align to your LCAP priorities, align to what the work is that you're doing around in ensuring that you're serving students and increasing access. But you can see one of the buckets is readiness for that multi-payer fee schedule. So if as a district, you're identifying that you want to expand services and you're really looking to the fee schedule, the multi-payer fee schedule as a mechanism in your strategic plan in your district to sustain those services, then that's part of what you can build with these allocation dollars, the capacity dollars. You can see the center box talks about expanding access. So expanding your access, whatever that might look like in your district, in your LEA. Maybe in your LEA, expanding access means you're going to take a portion of that allocation and invest in some brick and mortar. You're going to build a wellness center, a school-based health center, a family center. You're going to do something that's really a capital outlay. Maybe you need to invest in some technology. Maybe you need to invest in people. That's all allowable and in that expanding access bucket. Collaborative infrastructure is really how are we connecting with our managed care plans? How are we connecting with Medi-Cal eligibility for districts, LEAs that don't have their toe in the water in the Medi-Cal world? That's sort of step one to some of the other fee schedule readiness pieces. How are you connecting to commercial plans, meaning private health insurance? And then you can see the other partners. And you'll see as we get to how we've in this county broken out the total capacity grant that was provided, we are pushing out to all of you through the allocation the lion's share of the dollars, but there are some centralized supports that will be offered through the county office structure that fit in that collaborative infrastructure bucket. So these are the three big bodies of work that are associated with the capacity grant. Again, a lot of room for local control and really your LEA deciding what's best for your LEA. One of the things that we recognize about San Bernardino County that may be different from really honestly just about every other county in the state is that we know we're the largest geographic county, but we're also a county that has representation of large urban, mid-sized suburban, rural, frontier, we've got, what we call super small districts, so we within this county alone, have representation of just about every structure of LEA that exists in the state. And that's something that's very unique to this county. You can look at just about any other county in the state, and they don't have those geographic dynamics that we have. And that's one thing that makes our approach, we think, pretty unique to how we are allocating this capacity grant piece, because we know that we are a region of regions, and that's part of what we attempted to include in the allocation. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss it over to James, and I think, did I get that right? Oh no, yeah, pass it over to James, and then he's going to start to dive in a little bit deeper with some details. So thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Houston. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Sauer, and I'm one of the program coordinators here at the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. And I have the privilege of talking to you guys around the MOU and the implementation plan. But I just wanted to first just touch on the MOU with SBCSS. As the state sees, we will be the grant administrators for our LEAs. For the state, we have SCOE, which is Sacramento County Office of Education, and Santa Clara Office of Education are the grant administrators for the state to the counties, but we will be the grant administrators on behalf of the county to the LEAs. We are currently in the process of developing the language for the MOUs that will be being sent out by October 14th. So the MOUs will be sent out to your districts by October 14th. One of the things that we are going to be sending out from after this meeting is a quick survey to get some confirmations on point of contact for the grant, for the grant in general, and a point of contact for the MOU. Okay, so we have a touch point for the MOU. Let me see, just some other things. Again, in the MOU, it really will spell out each of our roles in this process in these next 2 years. Okay, so again, much more to come around this, but we are in development of that, and we'll be reaching out for the point of contact for our MOUs. Jameen, next slide, please. So the next pressing thing for the grant, or the next task besides the MOU and getting that signed, is going to be each of the LEAs is going to have to submit an LEA implementation plan. And your implementation plan is really going to be your plan for the usage, or the usage of the money allotted to your LEA. Okay, this will be accessed through the live binder, and I know we've been putting the live binder in the chat. Through the live binder, you'll be able to access the implementation plan. In the implementation plan, you will see that there is a PDF copy of the implementation plan that you can rehearse with, you can practice for, you can plan through. The actual submission of it will have to go through Qualtrics, kind of like what you did with the baseline survey. So again, much of the actual finalizing of the baseline survey implementation, progress reports, all those things are going to go through Qualtrics. But in the live binder, you will be able to access a PDF copy to just support your planning of that process. Also, the submission of that is due on November 10th. And these dates are hard dates for the state. So these are not our date. This is the date that the state has provided to us. So we will be supporting you all through, and we'll be talking later just around some office hours, as well as my colleagues and my team will also be a point of contact for each of the districts And so we'll be reaching out and giving some more discussion around that. But my team will be in support of all the LEAs to help you get this completed. Okay. So we will be holding some hours, and we'll talk more about that as we move forward. Jameen, you want to go to the next slide, please? So when we're looking at the what to include in the implementation plan, and we've hyperlinked in this PowerPoint, we won't go there, but the funding guidance from the Department of Healthcare Services spells out how the money can be spent. And so utilizing that funding guidance as your mechanism or tool to help you fill out your implementation plan will be very useful for you. But these are the 4 categories that will do those 3 bodies of work that Dr. Houston was talking about earlier in the slides. They're really looking at Medi-Cal enrollment, delivery and infrastructure, data collection, and billing infrastructure. So as we're looking at one day utilizing the fee schedule, these are the 4 components that the state Department of Healthcare Services sees as the pillars to completing that, or to being able to utilize the fee schedule. So what these mean, we'll go deeper into. We're not going to talk about these today, but in our office hours, we will do a lot more conversation about what these 4 mean for folks who don't know that. But the funding guidance will help you in the development of your implementation plan. Okay, as you see on there, I'll keep talking about these office hours. These bi-weekly office hours will be held on Thursdays, starting in another week, not this next Thursday passing, not this upcoming Thursday. What we do, and I've talked about, is sending out a survey. What we want to know is if those Thursday meetings should be in the AM or if they should be in the PM. So that'll be another question on the survey that we will be sending out to the point of contact that we currently have on file for this grant. Okay. Again, we're looking to confirm that. We know some districts or LEAs where it was filled out by the superintendent. The superintendent may not be the point of contact on the day-to-day basis or day-to-day contact. So we want to make sure we confirm that. In that confirmation, we will be collecting if it should be an AM meeting or a PM meeting for the bi-weekly office hours, and we'll take the majority and then we'll move from there. So if you picked AM and it ends up being PM, it's only because of the majority. Okay, so that's how we will go about identifying the best time to meet for our bi-weekly office hours. Jameen, next slide. And going along with all of these, this conversation and the MOU, these dates and deliverables are all going to be in the MOU, are going to help support the implementation plan. These are the deliverables for the grant. And again, we call it a grant because that's what the state calls it, but it's not the grant in that sense. But as you can see, as we have some of the deliverables will be tied to specific dollar amounts. And Farah will talk more about that after this slide. But just wanted to give you guys a snapshot of the deliverables and the expectations of your participation in this. Again, we have 3 progress reports, and those progress reports are really going to be the updating of your implementation. So from your implementation plan to your progress report, it should be supporting what is the updates and the progress of your plan. Okay. And then also lastly, we will have a final report. All these things would be submitted through Qualtrics again, and more to come as we get more information from the state that will then inform us of how we provide our office hour support for you all. And next slide, Jameen. I'm going to pass this to Farah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Farah Northcott, and I'm the Director of Healthy SBCSS at San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. And I'm going to be speaking about the allocation method. And so the 59 participating LEAs received a letter early last week indicating the amount that they were receiving for operational readiness for the capacity grant. So we'd like to share our allocation method for the almost $20 million that has been allocated, 80% of the capacity grant. So per the Department of Healthcare Services, we were able to distribute this 80% directly to the LEAs. And we determined to use two factors in calculating the proportionate share of the funds to be distributed. So first, we utilized ADA numbers to account for a little bit more than half of the overall allotment. The ADA calculation is on a tiered scale based on the size of the LEA. So we categorize them into super small, small, medium, and large, like Dr. Houston referenced earlier. The smaller LEAs received a higher amount per ADA than the larger LEAs. And we factored in that the larger LEAs will typically have more resources and capacity than the smaller LEAs. And inversely, the larger LEAs then received less dollars per ADA. So that was a little bit over half of the allocation. The other part was based on the LEA baseline survey answers to determine need and readiness. So there were 4 sections in the survey, as you may recall, and we almost evenly split them in terms of dollars, with the exception of the Medi-Cal enrollment. You can see there it's less than $1 million. And the other ones are almost evenly allocated around 2.5, 2.9 million. And so the Medi-Cal enrollment, because that's a little bit less, because most of the LEAs already had that established. So based on that survey, if you already had a component in place, you did not receive funding in that area. However, if you didn't have a component in place, then you're going to receive an allocation for that section. So as you can see, those 4 categories also had subcategories that we determined the questions and the answers, and then that turned into a formula. And so those 2 dollar amounts, the ADA allocation and the readiness allocation, those 2 dollar amounts were added together. And that's how we determine the LEA allocation. And then in terms of distributing the funds, you can see the dates there and the percentages. So we are receiving the funding in that same order. So we're receiving 50%, 40%, and 10%. And essentially we're turning that around and pushing it out to the LEAs as we receive them. And the important note is that the funds do have to be obligated by June 30th, 2026. So a little bit less than 2 years. Next slide, please. And here we have a timeline, which I know is small, and we will have this available for you to be able to see more in detail. But this is really an overview of the capacity grant prior to this meeting and moving forward. So you can see some things have already been in the works. We've had some informational webinars, some office hours. We've completed, as a County Office of Education, we completed a baseline survey. The LEAs completed a baseline survey. We've completed our implementation plan. Now it's the LEA's turn by November 10th to complete their implementation plan. James discussed the MOU process, which will be in the works the next few weeks. And then we've also referenced those progress reports, and you can see the progress report dates on this chart as well. The first one being due January 31st. And then July 31st, those are both 2025. And then we have a couple dates in 2026. And then also it's charted here, the funding dates. So December 31st, the first allocation, January 31st, and March 31st, 2026. And so that's basically a snapshot of where we have been and where we're going and how we arrived at the allocation method. So with that, next slide. And we seem to have gone through everything fairly quickly. So we will open it up for questions. Definitely you can raise your hand, or you can fill out the form that we've provided in the chat, and we're open to take questions.
Why don't we take, unless, I think it's in the chat, so why don't we take down the presentation deck? That might help us a bit to see.
And we can start from the people have been putting things in the question and answer link, and we can Mara, you can read those, and we can answer those until people get brave enough to start raising their hands.
So I have two questions actually. Oh, a couple. They're coming in. So the first question is, can we get a copy of this presentation? The presentation and the recording are going to be uploaded onto LiveBinder, and I believe Karen has put the link in the chat. So you'll have access to the slides and the recording after the meeting. Let me see. We have another question. Okay, does the LEA match any portion of this allocation?
No. I could give you more, but no. I can make it longer. Drag it out. No.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. How do we apply to begin with the fee schedule?
I was like, let Farrah, because the cohorts would go.
Yeah, so actually this Friday, to be part of cohort 3, there's an application process that's due. And then for cohort 1 has already happened. Cohort 2 is wrapping up. So really the only eligible ones right now to join would be cohort 3, which is due this Friday. And then also there's an interest list for cohort 4 that they would like for you to fill out if you're interested in cohort 4. I cannot say that word. However, you don't have to, it's not required to participate in 3 or 4 at this time.
So again, if I can kind of just, I think it's confusing. And if you're going, I don't understand anything you're saying, you're in good company, because it is not super clear, right? So what we're talking about, the letter that you received, that is an allocation. And the deliverables that we identified, development of the MOU, ensuring that you have a plan for your LEA, invoicing us, doing those progress check reports, right? All of that those are the conditions, those are the rules for that allocation. You're going to get that allocation. You're going to get that. That allocation is to be used to expand access to students for services around mental health, behavioral health supports. If in your plan to sustain after you set up whatever you're going to set up with this allocation includes participation in the fee schedule, you can use the allocation to prep for that. And then you can use that fee schedule as one of the ways that you would sustain ongoing this expansion of services. Depending on where a district is, they may or may not be interested in the fee schedule. And oh, by the way, there are a variety of ways to play in the fee schedule. So you can contract out, because there are certainly service providers that will do soup to nuts, like all aspects of, including claims and all of the things and the services. And you may want to do that. So that's part of what we will help you with and walk you through. There will be some centralized elements that we at the county office will offer to all of the districts, whether you're in the capacity grant or not, all districts, because our goal is to ensure that you have the supports that you need to the extent we can provide economy of scale through centralized supports, and then to the extent that each individual district is going to prioritize ongoing expenses beyond the life of this capacity grant period to sustain expansion of services. Okay.
I see Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Yes, I had a question about the implementation plan. I'm going to be working with several departments to make sure that we are all in agreement on how the funds are going to be used. But if we stray from that implementation plan, is that going to be bad? I mean, if like as we get going with this grant, if we find out later down the line that, you know what, we said we were going to use it this way, but it turns out we really need to use it this way, is it possible to change the plan during the year? Or is it once it's set there, it's set in stone?
You do have the opportunity to make changes throughout the year.
Thank you.
And then I see a question about information you shared said we could use the grants in a variety of ways. However, the 4 areas that need to be submitted for the implementation plan do include billing infrastructure, so it's a little confusing. It is. That's an option. Now, you're not required in your implementation plan to address every one of those readiness factors or every one of those buckets, if you will. You can prioritize one element, right? You don't have to do all of it. So yes, billing infrastructure is part of what is allowable. It's not required. There's not any single element in that implementation plan that's required. So you can park all your green dollars for your allocation into one aspect. You don't have to hit all of the aspects. I hope that clears up the confusion a little bit, but it is confusing. I agree.
Also, Tiffany had a question about the allowables, right? How to spend. And so in this deck, you'll be able to access the funding guide from DHCS. Okay. And it has some allowables in that document. Again, in our office hours, for folks who don't want to read through all that kind of stuff, we'll do a little more allowable kind of checklist, something easy access. But right now, if you were kind of looking for that, Tiffany, it would be in the funding guidance document. That'll be in this. And then we had another in the chat just asking if you'd be able to access this. So again, we're going to be sending, this recording is going to be accessible on the live binder that is linked, and we'll send that link out to all the folks who participated today as well. So you will be able to get the recording of this to share with your other colleagues who will be working on this.
I see a question. I want to address a little bit Tiffany's question about allowables. When you read through, if you want to, the guidance, it's a pretty wide berth. You'll be able to make a case for just about anything that's related to expanding behavioral health services to students. You'll be able to make a case for just about anything. I would always just caution you, whatever you're using one-time dollars on, you want to be intentional with, okay, how are we going to sustain that? That's where the connection to the fee schedule could come into play to help you with that. So that's just where that nexus is. But yeah, you've got a pretty wide berth. I see Michelle in the chat has, can we journal entry expenses prior to the allocation being received? Yeah, once you have that MOU from us, like signed, sealed, delivered, and even with your allocation letter, if you go to your business services team and say, we have this letter from SBCSS, we're in the process of developing an MOU, and we'll have the MOU, within a month. Can I set the budget up for this? You within your, I don't know whatever your internal business processes are, but a typical district, once you have like a funding notification, you should be able to set up a budget for that funding notification. And, in your LEA plan, there will be some budget elements. So it's not a bad idea to start thinking about how you're going to slice and dice that allocation into budget line items. That's a district decision. That's how, or an LEA decision. That's how you'll approach that. But once that budget is set up in your system, whatever your spending protocols, whatever your business practices are around spending against the dollars and waiting for reimbursement, that would be a district decision. My experience has been that once you have a budget set up, most districts will allow you to spend against that budget with an understanding that you do have funding coming your way. This is not a cost reimbursement situation. This is an allocation. So you will, as long as those benchmarks of you've got your MOU, we're going to push out to you 50% of the funding. As long as you've got your LEA plan finished, we're going to push out to you the 40%. There'll be a mechanism. You'll have to invoice it. You'll have to say, we did this, send it to us. There'll be some trigger points, but it's not going to be that you have to show the money is spent before you get it. That answers your question. Your business people will be happy. Let's put it that way.
Elizabeth, you have another question?
Yes, if I understood correctly on that chart that you guys provided, it was saying that distribution of the LEA fund should start between December 31st and March 31st. That's when we should actually start seeing the money come to our district. Is that what that's stating?
It wasn't a range, it was actually points in time. So we are expected to receive the money at our county office from the state any day now. And just there's those internal processes that we would like to send the money to you by December 31st, that 50%. So those are kind of deadlines, so to speak, for you to expect the money from us. So it would be that December 31st and that March date, and then that last 10% would be in 2026.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Let's check in the question link. I think we have more there as well.
So we have another question. Will the invoice for the allocation require the implementation plan for how the money will be spent?
Yes. Yes, so the LEA implementation plan includes what you're going to do, right? So those buckets of work, those readiness factors, those capacity factors, what are you going to do? And then how are you going to attach dollars to what you're going to do? So yes, there is a budget element, and you will be building a budget to that total allocation that you have in the letter. And that budget is aligned to what you say you're going to do, but it's what you say you're going to do within a pretty wide berth. Yeah, go ahead.
We have another question in the form. Do you have to be part of the cohort to claim funding?
Okay, so that's a loaded question. So for the capacity grant allocation, your LEA received a letter, which if you're here today, I'm pretty sure your LEA received a letter. We have 59 LEAs in San Bernardino County that are receiving a proportionate share of the capacity grant. That's an allocation. That's what you have. I'll repeat the question again then, because is it a cohort question?
I can clarify for you, Stephanie.
Okay.
I asked that. So yes, so as far as I know, you have the cohort 3, cohort 4s, all that, but can we do like our own billing to claim back the all payer fee money, or can you only do that if you're in a cohort, or can you do it independently of a cohort? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, Farrah can probably answer this better than I can. The state is rolling this out pretty slowly because it's, whatever, what's the analogy, all the analogies, flying the plane or building the plane while they're flying it. And I like personally remodeling the house while the kitchen's on fire. Like, whatever the analogy is that you want to use, that's what's happening. So Farrah, you can probably jump in and give her more specific answer.
Well, The billing timeline has been delayed a few times. So according to DHCS, we should have been able to bill July 1. Last time I checked, that is not happening. And those that were in the cohorts were, especially cohort 1, were more of early adopters to the process. But there's going to be a time where there's no more cohorts at some point in the future, probably next year. So these cohorts were just kind of learning labs moving along together. And hopefully I answer this correctly, but well, at least, to explain it correctly to you, you don't have to be part of the cohorts to engage in the fee schedule. There will be a point in time where there's no more cohorts. Is that answering?
Yes, thank you. That
Okay.
does. So it
Yeah,
sounds
so
like a good tool to use to be a part of a cohort. Like they'll help you, and that might be the plus. But you
right, there's
That's right.
a lot of support. There's office hours. There's tools and presentations available to those cohorts, and there's timelines and all of that. But those will go away eventually.
And certainly the lessons learned along the way through the cohorts. Let's say you're a district that's going to go slow to go fast, and you're going to learn from the other cohorts. That might be a strategy that you may choose to use along the way, because that's going to be worked through. And by the time the cohort learning labs are finished, many of the bugs will be worked out. I think about the early adopters for the iPhone, right? I didn't buy the first iPhone. I waited until I was probably a really pretty late adopter, but I waited. And by then the bugs had worked out and I could ask a friend, hey, how do I use this app? So there's a little bit of that, I think, in the cohort dynamic going on. Amar, is there another question?
Yeah, we have another question. So is there a deadline or goal date for having all MOUs signed? I see that they'll be sent by October 14th, but I'm wondering how long we have to have it signed and finalized.
I'm gonna go James for that one.
So we want to make sure that we have them. I think I was having a good conversation, a learning conversation with Dr. Houston around the second interim. I think that's what you called him, Dr. Houston, right? So we want to make sure. So we had a date of November 12th, I believe. I think we had November 12th that we want to have all of the MOUs signed and back to us so that we can then do our invoicing and get all of the money out by December 31st.
Right. So in the event, every LEA is a little bit different, and every LEA's board meetings are scheduled differently. And depending on the MOU amount, some of these MOUs may require board action. So depending on if your board meets once a month, twice a month, all of those things are going to impact your ability to, say, execute the MOU. In an ideal world, by the middle of November, you will have had all the approvals and everything that you need for the signed, sealed, delivered MOU back to us. And that's then what will trigger that first 50%. And with the target of getting funding out the door to you before the end or by the end of December, it's all going to be contingent upon that MOU execution. If for whatever reason your particular LEA isn't able to execute that MOU, really the result of that is that you may not get that first 50% by that December 31st date. Doesn't mean you won't get it at all. It's just going to delay proportionately, depending on how long of a delay on the MOU.
We do have another question in the form as well. So this is a question related to the funds. Can we split funding for a position between the capacity grant and CYBHI with Medi-Cal, for example, 0.5 FTE for a position from capacity grant and 0.5 from Medi-Cal?
that's a local decision, how you slice and dice your green dollars. So yes, there's no prohibition on our end. The prohibition is going to be within your business practices.
We have another question in the form. So is there a sample of the progress report? We will need to provide evidence of our implementation besides the progress reports, implementation plan, and MOU. So will we need to provide evidence of our implementation besides the progress reports, implementation plan, and MOU?
I'm going to defer to Farah on that. I don't think we have samples yet, but
Yeah, I don't believe that the SCOE Santa Clara County Office of Ed has released any templates. And besides
we
that,
did-
we're not,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we're not aware of any other documentation that's needed. So it should just be, you know, our established MOU and the progress reports and plan.
And that's what I was going to say too.
Yeah, we have another question in the form. Will the EHR be provided for everyone in the county, or do we need to find our own?
That's an excellent question. In one of the slides, you may have noticed that the 100% of the allocation, 80%, like we mentioned, is going to the LEAs. There's 10% that's earmarked for collective impact. We are utilizing that 10% for a countywide electronic health record. It is our goal and wish that we have one EHR for the county. And so it's not required that an LEA participate in that EHR. However, we believe that it'll be advantageous. So that the EHR has not been selected, and that will still be a process. It's not a decision we're going to take lightly or make quickly. So more to come on that, but it is in our plan.
And some of you, just related to that, some of you may have been approached by entrepreneurs who are on top of all of this, who are presenting to you, showing you electronic health records and how they can do all of the things, and they know all the people and all of that, and that they've got it all going on. I just want to remind you know, when Farah says we're going slow and we're going with intention related to electronic health records, that is real. And it is primarily to ensure that we are in a position as a county to provide the best services to our districts that want to participate in a centralized EHR system. And there's a lot to that. And with an understanding, based on what you heard Farah say, that even our cohort 1 districts have yet to actually have a claim be processed, it's a little bit sloggy. So it's possibly going to take a little bit longer than probably most everyone anticipated to really get dialed in how this system is going to really come together. So
Renee, you have your hand raised.
Hi, I just have a question about the EHR that you were just talking about. Is that something that we will all have access to? Or that
Yes,
you
that's
will be purchasing with that 10%?
that's the goal, is for the LEAs to have access to the EHR.
That's amazing. Thank you.
And Antonio asked the question about, will the EHR include a billing component? And yes, it will.
mm-hmm. Yep. I like to use claims as the word, but Rebecca helped me. We call it fee schedule, we call it billing, we use things, but really the mechanism for claims. And am I using the right words, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what you're talking about. Submitting claims, definitely.
Right. So, and Rebecca, you know, like I said, we've got a whole team of people, and, you know, MCPs, EHRs, capacity grant, fee schedules, Medi-Cal for some of us is not my first language. So we are definitely deferring to our natives. And Rebecca is one of our translators for us. And she really does ensure that we are using the right terminology and getting ourselves straight. But we're quick studies, and we know where to go to ensure that we have the right answers for you. So again, if all of you are going, wow, new acronyms, more than I ever thought I need to know about, electronic health records, electronic medical records, whatever the new acronyms are, you're in good company. This is a safe space. So any other questions? I saw one in the chat that I know that I saw earlier, but I think we didn't answer from Ellen.
We have some in the form.
Okay.
So when does cohort 3 and cohort 4 start?
So cohort 3, if you want to participate in cohort 3, again, I keep saying that's separate from this capacity grant, but if you want to participate in cohort 3 to be that learning lab for the fee schedule, the claims portion of the potential for sustainability, that survey is due on Friday, this Friday, September 27th. And then the interest list, as Farah said, for cohort 4 is also available now.
Yes, and I don't believe I'm not sure when the actual cohort 3 and 4 start. I just know when the deadline is, but I don't have the date on when that cohort starts, if you're interested in joining that, which you don't have to.
Ellen asked in the chat, so we first apply for the capacity grant. So if you're here today, it's because you have an allocation for the capacity grant. So it's called grant, but it's an allocation. So you don't have to apply. You've already done the process if you're here. So Ellen, you're already in on capacity grant. So the question, and then she says, and then we apply for the fee schedule to cover the services. Well, what you do is actually you set up the infrastructure to participate in the fee schedule, to file claims for reimbursement of the expanded services that you've now built the capacity and are now providing. Or maybe you already have capacity, maybe you're already providing them. That's okay too. You can now, there are elements that you can now bill for. And entities that you can now bill. So again, private insurance is part of the expansion. I'll answer that one.
We have another question in the Google form. When do you anticipate selecting the electronic health record? And are you getting other members in the county on the committee who selects the EHR?
I'll let James answer that because we do have a network that we're developing, kind of an advisory. So go ahead, James.
Yeah, so we've started a collaborative network of folks with the Department of Behavioral Health. Our 3 managed care plans in our county, which are IHP, Molina, and Kaiser. Those are all 3 of our managed care plans. So we have from our SB-HIP districts, the districts who participate in SB-HIP, another acronym in CYBHI work stream. But we had 5 districts who were part of that, who we are utilizing as our LEA connections to this work. So we have a group of folks as well as CA Help. So we have the CA Help and DMCC being a part of this collaborative effort of countywide collective impact work that we're going to be doing. So they're going to be helping to be a what is the word? Kind of a advisory group for the county office to speak on behalf. Of course, as we are going through this process, and if folks feel the desire to be a part of some of those discussions, my team, me and myself and my team would be available for folks to engage in some of that work. But we have already started working with the advisory group on some of this work thus far.
And if I can just add to what James is saying, I don't know, but I anticipate that in the EHR conversation and the I'll just say the contractor, the vendor that would potentially be who we would engage with countywide, I can see that we would have more than one option, because again, countywide, a one size fits all when we're talking about Trona, Baker, Needles, San Bernardino City, Ontario, Montclair, and Morongo. Yikes. I'm not sure that a one size fits all square peg round hole will work for all of those. Now, I don't know that, I'm thinking maybe two options. Now, that may not be the perfect situation. However, I can imagine an option of a provider that is more full service, where, we'll not only do the claims, we can provide the services as well. Think about Needles, Trona, Baker, right? I don't know that they're going to be able to build their own capacity with their own people or even from their own communities. That may be limiting, but engaging with a provider that can provide the services and do the claims, right? That might be a great option. And for a district that's got some infrastructure, got some capacity, got some comfort, is going to really dive deep into this. Maybe an option for the billing piece, the electronic health records piece, and the claims piece works better. I can imagine a world in our county where we would have more than one option. But those are all conversations that are ongoing and have been ongoing, just so that you know. That's kind of where we're at. We do recognize the diversity within our county. It is an amazing asset and an amazing challenge at the same time. So
We do have another question. How will HIPAA be covered if all LEAs are able to access the SPCSS electronic health record?
yeah, James Fair can jump in, but that's part of the conversation of the agencies that we're having conversation with, is that everything has to be able to check all of the HIPAA, the FERPA, the internet protections, the everything that we're required to do in school districts. And that's, to be quite honest, one of the challenges of spending other people's money, right? So we're talking about health and human services rules, and then we're talking about education rules. And as much as we'd like to think that they align perfectly, they don't. So figuring out where those gaps are is part of this experiment that we're in right now. So figuring out the differences between HIPAA, FERPA, internet protection, all of those pieces that we have, privacy, parent rights. Oh my goodness, we could unpack Pandora's box there, which we're going to have to. That's all part of it. So encryption, making sure that the exchange of data is fully encrypted and safe, and all of that is, which is why we're going really slow. So I did not answer your question at all, but it's going to be handled. Doggone it.
Okay, we do have another question. On the implementation plan, do we need to fill out all the boxes or just the areas we want to focus on?
Just the areas that you want to focus on.
We did have a question in the chat. Is there a deadline by which the funds will need to be spent or utilized? And the answer is yes, by June 30th, 2026. I don't have any more questions in the Google form or in the chat, so.
Okay, anybody have any more questions? I know there'll be questions, I'm sure, that you think of after the fact. You know, we're here for you, and we're going to get those office hours started once we determine whether it's going to be a morning office hour, afternoon office hour, based on your majority selection. But we really thank you for spending your time with us. We hope it was informative, and we really look forward to the next couple years and working on this important work with you.
And I'm pretty
stay
sure
on.
that link, that Google link, will still be live, right? So when you think of questions, continue to populate there. And we are going to be memorializing and recording all of these and using those also to inform those office hour preparation.
And we will be hanging back if anybody wants to hang on and have more of a smaller conversation.